Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. It's your favorite paranormal investigator. My name is Tim Sudano with Paranormal Insight. Today, we have Mr. Stephen Bassett, one of the kings of UFO and UAP disclosure. Let's bring him on in. Steve, welcome to the show.
So I've been elevated to king status. I think I'm going to decline that. Kings eventually get assassinated or something. It's not good. I'm just a poor political activist trying to get people.
Okay. Well, then certainly one of the authorities. We'll say that.
Yeah, there you go. Now you got it.
Yeah, there we go. One of the authorities. So let's dive into disclosure where we're at. It really hit the fan, as it were. It really came into the public consciousness with these. Well, actually, it started a long time ago, but up until like very recently, people were kooks if they talked about UFOs and UAPs and all that fun stuff. So, what's the timeline of disclosure up to this point? Because we haven't quite gotten to true disclosure.
Well, let's define the terms. Around 2001, I started making a case for a term called disclosure with a capital D, which is a proper noun. Okay. Disclosure with a small d was certainly mentioned and referred to regarding this issue going back to the 90s and so forth. But as the process of revealing, getting this out, getting that out, doing this research and so forth, the whole process of what I call the citizen science, research, journalistic activism operation. And I say citizen because the big shots, the big money, the big organizations, the big media, just didn't want to do the job. And so regular people came forward and did it, right? Using their talents and their own resources and going through hell. But they built a mass body of evidence going all the way back to the 40s. And this increased body of evidence was part of a, quote, small d disclosure process. In 2021 or so, I said, no, that's fine. But we need something else. We need a fundamental goal. A specific goal that the developing activist movement, which was starting to really come together 2000, that we must achieve in order to warrant people giving us their time, their money, paying attention, getting involved. It can't just be some nebulous, we need peace on earth kind of thing. No. And so capital D disclosure was that. And in fact, it's not just made up. It is in fact what has to happen and what will happen. And that is so that we can truly engage the issue as a civilization, benefit from what we know about it and may learn about it going forward as a civilization, and be able to start trusting our government again. We have to have formal capital D disclosure. And that is, and only is, the confirmation of this non-human, quote, presence. I prefer to call it extraterrestrials. My money's on that. I'm going to win that bet. Presence engaging the human race by the heads of state of nations, not an undersecretary, not a member of the military, not an airplane pilot, not even an astronaut. It has to come from the head of state, because what the head of state says has a lot of gravitas for those that people understand that. They may not think that as much anymore, meaning who gives a damn what this prime minister or this president or this whatever says. They're making a big mistake. Because the things they say and do can literally change your life, destroy it, enhance it, destroy your country. And so the heads of state will be the ones that execute disclosure, starting with one. I don't think it'll be a combined announcement. And the only reason for that is it's not easy to get heads of state to get together to do something collectively. There's a whole lot you got to go through. And in that process, the intent of the process will leak out, and suddenly it'll be leaked that some heads of state are going to disclose that we're not alone in the universe. One head of state will go first, and after that the others will follow almost immediately, confirming, yes, this is true. And when asked, well, why did you wait for someone to go first? in this case, it's the United States that will go first. I'm pretty sure it is because we deferred to the United States. We felt it was their call because of their place in terms of defending the West and defending all countries ultimately from a nuclear war under the fundamental concept of mutual assured destruction. Most powerful nation, the richest nation with enormous nuclear weapons capability. As for Russia and China, for the Soviet Union and China, I don't know what their answer will be. It will probably along the lines of, well, we just didn't feel like it, but now we do. But I've mentioned this to many of my. Just a second here, I've got a little problem. Let me just go here.
No worries.
This will come back. My camera's frozen. Hang on a moment.
It'll probably cycle up in a second.
Yeah. Okay. It stopped. I need to put it back.
Do you want to turn it off on the feed and then turn it back on, or?
This is actually my droid cam.
Let me remove you from the stage and then add you back in and see if that helps.
No, I think it's on this end. It's you. I'm going to have to close out the droid can and bring it back. Hang on. Well, in the meantime, let's.
No worries.
Hang on. Let me just do this for the meantime. I'm going to change cameras. It won't be quite as nice, but it will work. Let's see how that. No, that's not going to work.
Okay.
All right. Never mind.
Oh, well, gotcha.
We're not live, obviously, so that helps.
No, we're totally live.
Oh, we are live. Oh, crap. Sorry. Folks.
That's okay, though.
Just a little tech thing here. Let me see what I can do. I'm going to get my droid cam back on. I'm going to do this. I'm going to close it down. Right. Yeah. Right. Come on. Okay. Now I'm going to bring it back. At least I stay frozen on the thing. That's
live television. Nice. Can't beat it.
See me. It's the first time that this has happened. My droid cam doing this, and normally it doesn't give me a problem.
Some would say we're being interfered with.
So here we go. Sorry about
there
that.
you are. You're back live.
Okay. Again, I'll be able to.
That's okay.
If it happens again, I'll be able to repair it very quickly. And so, capital D disclosure, starting with a single head of state, was the concept that I have spent 30 years, last 25 years, trying to instill into the discourse. And I think it's worked. I think a lot of people, when they talk about disclosure, they're talking about this formal confirmation event. And that's good. So we have been heading towards that for 78 years. And as it happens, we are now extremely close. We've had a few times when it looked like there was a path to disclosure, capital D, but that path closed. This time we're way much further down the line, and it could happen at any time, believe it or not. Now, the thing that has left things somewhat up in the air is that as it happens, and this is mostly a coincidence, the last days, weeks, perhaps months of the truth embargo, as I came to call the policy of the government to withhold this from us. That's another term that I kind of instilled, I put out there, is simultaneously coming to an end in the middle of extraordinarily disruptive, complicated political developments, both foreign and domestic. And that's just the way that it is. It's like you want to take a nice jaunt out in the country and have a picnic and enjoy the outdoors. And as you're arriving, a major thunderstorm comes in. And so you either turn around and go back, which we can't do, or you pitch a tent, dig in, and wait for it to pass. But you just can't predict everything. So that is what's happening. And what is notable about that is that the disclosure process leading to capital D disclosure has not, while it's been slowed, it has not been reversed or stopped. It is steadily moving forward no matter what is thrown at it. And a lot has been thrown at it. And so that is more confirmation to me that we're about to get it. Because at some point, we're going to get a little bit of a break and you're going to see some major developments, and they're already. So I'm happy to give go ahead and respond to that, if you will, and then I'll start getting the particulars of why we are so close to ending this truth embargo.
That's good news. First off, I mean, if the, as you put it, truth embargo is collapsing, and this capital D disclosure, to use your term again, is going to come to fruition, I applaud that. That's fantastic. Why would, okay? So I have the answer in my head, but for everyone else out there who maybe didn't think this deeply about it, although we have a lot of smart people in our audience, why do you think such disclosures, such claims were immediately dismissed? Was it panic by the public? I mean, are they going to use that old radio show, War of the Worlds, as an example? Because they've been using it for years, decades.
They used it for a good while. It was one of many little memes that they relied on to sort of dismiss it out of hand. No, it wasn't about panic of the public or any of that. It was in general. Okay, there's a lot of little things you can point to. Even Margaret Mead's study of the cargo cults of the Pacific after the war, all kinds of nonsense. All of them come under the general heading of the American people, the world's people can't handle the truth. And then as the truth started coming out and the research was being done by the people, putting forward convincing evidence and narrative that this fact was absolutely true, then they added another one to that. And I say they, meaning the managers of truth embargo. It says that you don't have a need to know, right? In other words, maybe you can handle it, but you don't have a need to know it. And so we're not going to let you know it. And so these things all come under that general heading. And after 30 years in this, I can say with confidence that from the beginning, the problem wasn't the public's not need to know. It wasn't the problem the public couldn't handle the truth, even right after the war. The problem was the government could not handle us knowing the truth. And they had reasons for that, but the principal one was national security. So the truth embargo owes its 70 now 8-year longevity as a absolute lie in the face of obvious evidence worldwide every day to millions of people. It owes its longevity. Probably nothing like it has ever, I don't think anything like it has ever happened in human history. And that it has happened in the modern era in democratic cultures with journalism and mass communications ability, including the rise of the internet and social media and podcasting and everything else, is remarkable. But the reason that it did get through 78 years is the extraordinary synchronicity or simultaneity of the modern era of UAP, the modern era of ET engagement, and the nuclear arms race. These two things virtually started together. And we've come to learn that it's not that they just happen to start together. They are directly connected. So what you have is the beginning of the modern era starts in World War II, very, very light, nothing big, but a lot of plasma, controlled plasma, I think, though I don't know for sure, but controlled plasma.
Are you referring to the Foo Fighters in World War II?
Absolutely. We're being seen shadowing planes of all three major participants in that war, Germany, Japan, and the United States. They didn't cause any trouble. They didn't shoot anything down. They were reported, but there was a war going on. And that's all. Okay, not a big deal, not scary. But then we ended the war in the Pacific by doing something that we didn't necessarily have to do, and that is we dropped 2 nuclear bombs on 2 cities and killed hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children, the vast majority of which were not combatants. And the extraterrestrials saw this, and it changed their agenda. And so right away, more sightings started happening. Now, this is a different time, but sightings of craft started happening and started being reported. This went on through all of 1946, but again, it was not on the radar of the public in general. But it was happening, and historians will be able to go back eventually and find articles about this that are now deep in the microfiche libraries of various newspapers or destroyed. But throughout 46, a lot of activity is taking place. We have the famous sighting of Kenneth Arnold over Mount Rainier of not saucers, but chevron-shaped craft flying in unison, about, I think, 8. This got a lot of news. This was significant. If it wasn't going to be the Kenneth Arnold sighting, it would have been something else. And that generated a lot of stir, a lot of media attention, fairly safe, no big deal. But then one of those craft, because that's the kind of craft that crashed at Roswell, did a crash near Roswell, and because it was early on and didn't have a policy, the Blanchard, the head of the base, asked the public relations guy, Walter Haw, to put out a press release and say, we got a saucer. And at that point, not only the modern era of the UAP engagement of the human race gets underway in force, but the very basic beginning of the truth embargo gets underway, because the moment when Truman was told this, he immediately informed Roger Ramey to sit on it, staunch it, whatever. He didn't tell him, we must never tell the people about this. I doubt that, but rather we need time to think about this. All right, take that press release back. We need time to think this over. This is kind of a big deal, General Ramey. And Ramey did that. The same day the first press release went out, he holds a press conference and says, no, it's a weather balloon. And so at that point, the truth embargo, I guess you could say, gets underway. All right, it's early, but it's underway, and from that point forward, what happens is that the government's awareness of this extraterrestrial presence and the fact that it has at least one crash vehicle, maybe another, maybe 2, possibly even 3, but at least one crash vehicle and bodies. This fact is coupled with the fact that each month, a year that went by since Roswell, the United States government, it became clearer to them that there was a new enemy. There was going to be a new risk of war. It would be world war, and it would be nuclear. And so that's not World War II or World War I. As awful as they were, they understood what nuclear war meant very quickly. They knew that the Soviet Union was not going to be a friend of the West. There's a lot of blame to go around there. And they knew that they were going to build missiles and nuclear bombs. And so they held fast on this issue, meaning we are not going to go public with this until we see where things are going, because there's so many uncertainties and unknowns about how that's going to affect what's going on. I mean, maybe somebody raised their hand back in the late 1940s in a meeting with Truman and said, look, if we tell the world about the ET presence, maybe that will make it easier to deal with the Soviet Union. Maybe we can all come together, like Reagan said, to defend ourselves against these awful whatever. But they couldn't do that. And then every month and year that went by after that, the Cold War got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, locking in the policy of truth embargo in this issue, making it absolutely unbreakable. And the fact that we had a few moments where things kind of loosened up. We did have an end to, quote, Cold War I, sort of, when the Soviet Union collapsed. But very quickly, because that's how we roll, we started Cold War II. And as we went forward from there, which is in the early 90s to now, we've managed to get even closer to nuclear war than when we were during the Soviet Union. And so all those two things together is why the truth embargo has lasted. I get it. But we've also learned that it's not just coincidental that the ETs initiated the modern era of engagement because of the use of those bombs on humans. Might not have done it if we hadn't done that. But they have a very significant engagement or involvement with this issue, to the point that they have turned our nuclear weapons off repeatedly, turned off the Soviet nukes a number of times. They have interfered in other ways with nuclear war situations, what we'll call nuclear tampering, nuclear weapons tampering. And they have put messages in the heads of kids and contactees regarding the fact that we are headed towards an absolutely destructive future. And so that is where that is my basic short explanation of why there was a truth embargo, why it's lasted 78 years, and then the matter is at hand, how it will finally end.
Okay, the tie between these two seemingly separate events. I mean, our Cold War with, powers that be and the other our would-be enemies, and then the UFO things. I never made that connection before. That's very interesting to me. So that is just super interesting. So we waited too long to deal with the ET problem, and it got worse. So before we go there, let's take a step back to World War. Go ahead.
The ET problem didn't get worse. That the risk of nuclear war got worse. And the revealing or the confirmation of the ET process became more difficult, right? The overall engagement of the ETs in the human race in the last 78 years has been relatively steady. It's not clear that it's gotten worse per se or better. It is what it is. But the matter of human affairs, both foreign and domestic, has gotten way worse.
That's what I was making reference to. If I misspoke, my apologies.
Okay, I'm sorry.
First up, before I continue, I want to say hello to our texters, Heidi and Taurus Girl. Welcome to the show. They're in the chat room with us. Also want to go back to when we dropped those bombs. There's a theory called the many worlds theory. You may know about it. Do you think it's because we did affect other dimensions or alternate realities, whatever it is you want to say, with these bombs going off, even when we were testing them?
Yeah.
There's that theory that says, well, we interfered with multiple layers of reality, and that's what forced them to come and check us out or do something about it or what have you.
I have a modest degree in physics. I was not in the right frame of mind to go on to get a PhD in it, and it's very old. But I have science is my interest is in science, and I follow it a lot. Mm-hmm. I have a sense of it. Okay, and so on a personal basis, I have almost zero confidence in the many worlds theory. I don't think it's valid at all.
Okay,
and I do not think that, and therefore, the idea that exploding a couple of nuclear bombs somehow affected other civilizations or other entities is highly unlikely. The fact is that every second, our sun, which is a pitifully, not particularly major sun, so I don't think a big deal. Every second, thousands, not hundreds of thousands of nuclear explosions are going on. All right. All suns are basically giant nuclear explosion devices. And so it just doesn't make sense. And it doesn't matter. People can have fun theories. It's science fiction. Science fiction has traveled in time side by side with this issue. But I respond this way because it is somewhat of a distraction. All right. And I want to keep people focused. What happened there is that we didn't disturb the extraterrestrials. We killed 200 and some thousand Japanese men, women, and children. That's what happened there. And the reason that's important is, and as I said many times, is that they are able to travel from star to star, which means that eventually we're going to travel from star to star. And if that should happen soon, and I happen to think we're closing in on it, I don't think anybody would deny that we're not going to go out where no man has gone before unarmed. So we're going to take our proton torpedoes and our nuclear weapons with us just to be safe. And other civilizations, quite appropriately, are not going to let that happen. And I believe that is another major aspect of this engagement going back to 1945. And there's a case could be made for that. The one book that will get you up to speed on this nuke ET connection, two books. First of all, here's your homework lesson for those that want to really kind of get this. One, read UFOs and Nukes by Hastings. Watch the UFO and Nukes documentary, right? Watch the Aerial School documentary called Aerial Phenomena, AER, Ariel. All right. Um, and well, and then read up on the Ariel School event. You can also read up on the Westall event. You do those things, and what I just told you will manifest.
Okay. Good to know. Ladies and gentlemen, you have your homework on that. Let's move on to a more, dare I say, terrestrial issue regarding all this. It was brought up from a fellow podcaster that disclosure, capital D disclosure, happens. Let's move a few ticks into the future.
Mm-hmm.
Are we really prepared? Is society going to collapse? Is society going to conform? Where do you stand on the human reaction to capital D disclosure, after the fact?
Well, thanks to the work of untold thousands of just regular people, not only in the United States, but around the world, and thanks to the highly profitable work of a lot of professional film creators, directors, producers, cinematographers, who have generated somewhere in the range of 600 science fiction films that have ETs in them, and plenty of other science fiction films that don't have ETs in them, but 600 that actually have these ETs in them. We're pretty prepared. We are very prepared. It's not going to be a shock, I assure you. Now, are we prepared for the world in which everybody on the planet that has any access to information is going to know that we're not alone? I think we are. I can give a lot of reasons for that, but why bother? Because it's going to happen whether we're prepared or not. Were we prepared for World War I, World War II, right? Were we prepared for the onset of the nuclear age, or the cars? What? I mean, pick it. I mean, it doesn't matter. There is a relatively defined way that civilizations move forward, and they move forward. They don't go backward. And anyone wants to jump out in front of this process and say, "Look, we're not ready for this. Why don't you hold?" Might as well stand on the shore of the Pacific Ocean and command the tide to turn around and go back. So it just doesn't matter. And so those that want to think along those lines, that's fine. But you need to start thinking not about are we prepared or not, but what you're going to do to prepare.
Do you have any recommendations on that front to prepare?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
How much time have you got?
Hit us with it.
So
we got 2 hours, an hour and a half now.
We do. Okay. Now I can do 2 hours standing on my head. Look, now that we're near the end of the disclosure process, we're seeing exactly what I expected. The preparation is underway. Not only the preparation to finally end the truth embargo, which is going to have to come from the head of state, which apparently is going to be President Donald Trump, but also the world that follows, which I call the post-disclosure world. My good friend and colleague, Danny Sheehan, uses that phrase, but he also talks about a worldview change, a new paradigm. It will be a new paradigm, and not a strictly scientific paradigm, but as paradigms go, it'll be the biggest paradigm shift ever. And we will be in this new world where we're going to have an opportunity to change our thinking and have a new worldview. Okay, so so there is preparing for that, not just the event of disclosure, but the post-disclosure. Now, because we're so close, we're seeing plenty of evidence of this. In the last 7 years, the professional journalists who have always covered this issue, going back to the 40s, it's hard to know how many actual print articles have been written about this that are legit, not silly. Could be 60, 80, 90, 100,000. I don't know. I know that I have logged 16,000 articles on my website, paradigmresearchgroup.org, from internet sources, right? Some of them I had to kind of copy and put up on a separate file, but I don't have the resources to start diving into the microfiche and archives of newspapers going back to the 40s, but 16,000 is, I mean, just log those in. And so the journalism has been covering it, but now they're really into it. They've escalated their engagement. And in the last 7 years, I've logged in 7,000 articles from mainstream professional journalists covering every aspect of the subject. That's one sign that the journalistic world is pretty much anticipating this is going to go down. All right. Secondly, major organizations are being created. This is relatively recent. And by that, I mean very substantive, able to raise substantial amount of money involving people with substantial rank and station. A perfect example of this is the Soul Foundation, soulfoundation.org, which is a science think tank based out of Stanford University, or based near whatever, Stanford University. And then you've got the UAP Disclosure Fund, which I think has raised a few $1 million. That's a 501c4 political entity that has been created not to get disclosure, but rather to be prepared to engage the political realities post-disclosure. All right. The New Paradigm Institute, chaired by Danny Sheehan, which is based in the Romero Institute, has raised quite a bit of money, and it needs to raise millions more. Please donate to create a very substantial website and a range of projects, which while some are targeting getting this disclosure done, getting the confirmation from the president, much of which, and eventually all of which, will be about the post-disclosure world, how we're going to deal with it. And of course, Danny's been talking about that for years. In other words, the worldview change that is going to come, whether we want it or not, and has the potential to change everything for the better. All right. And MUFON has ramped up its activities, it's broadened its mission statement, added a major media component, which is run by Ron James, has hired a lobbying firm, had meetings on the Hill. So they are preparing for the post-disclosure world. My little entity, Paradigm Research Group, is preparing by converting to a 501c3 because I'm not as vulnerable as obviously I used to be. I can be a nonprofit now and not be concerned about being shut down. I have a board of directors and can now accept tax deductible funding. And I'm starting pretty much with zero because I've been month to month for a very long time. I need about $25,000 from one wise and individual with foresight and resources to get my plane off the ground, in which case PRG can be fast and nimble and it can go a lot of places and do a lot of things. I have a number of projects. So I'm preparing for the post-disclosure world. I am pretty sure that major corporations are preparing for it, but they're not going to say anything about that. Whether it's the oil industry or the energy industry, you pick it. They have massive resources and the ability to get information. So they're preparing privately. Major think tanks like the Center for American Progress, the Enterprise Institute, the Cato Institute, they're very likely privately creating divisions within them to address the post-disclosure world. They're not going to address the disclosure process leading to disclosure. That is awkward and they're just not comfortable with that. But when disclosure happens, they're already going to have entities set up. The Department of Defense is preparing and so forth. So there is plenty of that. Who is not preparing yet are basically the American people in general. People that have jobs and families and not a lot of resources, and I got to work every day, sometimes one or two jobs. They are not preparing, and they are my audience. I've given more interviews on this subject than anybody living or dead as a populist political activist. And my role is to try to convey the essence of things and where things are going to people in a way that can understand it, not to convince scientists or generals at the Pentagon that it's true. They already know it's true. And advanced disclosure. Not minimum. I'm trying to get the disclosure, and there's a lot of things I do in that regard, activist. But at the core of my activist work is simply trying to let people know what's coming, give them a perspective of what's going on in a way they can understand and not get lost down the rabbit hole, which is a rabbit hole that was dug by the United States government. It's the deepest, darkest rabbit hole ever. And in that sense, I'm doing what I can. But I'm not the only one. I mean, there's plenty of people creating docs and other things that are helping to get people information and books and so forth, and the internet and the podcast army, which is now a major development. The podcast thing is not appreciated for how huge it is. It's going to change the world. But that's why I do all the podcast interviews. So that's what I'm doing to help people prepare as best they can to benefit in the post-disclosure world. But most importantly, all of the preparation that's taking place, with the possible exception of the Department of Defense and other aspects of the military intelligence complex, is about one very important matter. If American people and institutions, companies, entities, and all of that will have a decision to make, actually they need to be making it now. The post-disclosure world could transform civilization and the human race. Do we want it to be simply remade like the pre-disclosure world by the same people that put us where we are now? Or we want to use this opportunity to remake it in very different ways so that it is much more less destructive and helpful? Do we want the old world to just move into the new world and take it over? Or do we want to change? This is really at the core of this transition. It's not just a paradigm shift of huge proportions. It is an opportunity for 8 billion people in 200 countries to decide, are we going to change our path, or are we simply going to destroy the environment and ourselves and leave that catastrophe that the ETs have been putting in the minds, contactees and school children, for the last 60, 70 years?
Lots to think about. I mean, how do I put this? Ideally, how would you see us as Americans, as the world of humans, positively transitioning into this new paradigm with minimal collateral, for lack of a better term, versus... Well, no, let's start there.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, obviously, I would need, to really answer that question properly, you need a couple of supercomputers and millions of dollars. As it happens, there are people that have supercomputers and millions of dollars, and I'm sure they're already working on it. God bless them, but they're not telling me yet. But I look forward to see what they come up with. But historians will write tens of thousands of books about what happened when we went from the truth embargo, the pre-disclosure world, and into the post-disclosure world, and then what the effects of that will be over the next years and maybe even decades. All right, about tens of thousands of books.
Okay.
So, what's an answer that could even make any have any impact at all? There's one, and that is this. At the core of just about all of the awful behavior that humans do, some way individually and also institutionally and also on the level of nations, going back, well, to the beginning of the modern civilization era, about 12,000 years. Awfulness. Unbelievable destruction, the slaughter of hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. In other words, they didn't die a natural death. Murder, mayhem, invasions, destruction, genocides, all of that. We've had 12,000 years of that. And the only thing that slowed it down and stopped it is that we finally were able, because we're so smart, to develop weapons so awful, we became afraid to use them. And so for 78 years, our most powerful weapons have been on hold under the umbrella concept, which is a pretty thin concept, of mutual assured destruction, meaning nobody is stupid enough to use nuclear weapons because they would be destroyed, completely dismissing the idea that it could happen accidentally, and almost has on a number of occasions. But at the core of all of it is lies. Okay. The way people, the way institutions and governments and even individuals are able to abuse other people, other countries, other institution always involves lies. Institutional lying, particularly at the level going right up to the virtual fundamental government of the country. Uh, we live in a complex society, and as we've gotten closer to the future, or to the present rather, more people, a lot more people to, what are you going to do, right? Say you got 2 billion people out there giving you a hard time. You're going to go kill 2 billion? Hell, even Genghis Khan couldn't do that. And so you got that problem, and then you've got,
but you didn't do it.
such a more complex. How do you manipulate them? How do you get them to do stuff you want to do? You can't. How are you going to threaten 8 billion people? Just get them in line. So what you do? You lie to them. And so what we've seen in the modern era, among other things, is the rise of propaganda to literally an art form in every respect you can imagine. And so whether you're talking about commercial advertisement, government information, go on and on and on and on and on, the use of manipulative language, almost always involving a massive amount of lying, has become ubiquitous. Okay. And as a result, we're dying from the lack of truth. If you think of the human race, if you think of truth as the blood flowing through the world body politic, not the body politic of a nation, but the world body politic, meaning Gaia is a living being, sort of, and it's being punished to death by lies, and the human race is essentially as one body politic. The blood of the body politic is in fact truth. Right? And so what's happening is, whether you're talking about the body politic of the United States or China or Russia or anywhere else, we're bleeding out. We're literally bleeding out. And just as with a living entity, it can lose a certain amount of blood, but at some point, once it loses enough, it dies. It's called bleeding out. We are bleeding out. Now, that's about as simple as I can make it. Now, with that as the preface, let me go one step forward in this grotesque metaphor or extreme metaphor. The truth embargo's end will be the greatest, will end the greatest lie in human history. 78 years of massive evidence everywhere that we're not alone in the universe, with every government refusing to acknowledge it, and avoid it, undermine it, demean it, intellectually ghettoize it, whatever it took. It's not happening. It's the emperor's new clothes on massive steroids for decades. It will be the greatest lie to end. It will be the greatest truth moment, because when that announcement comes, probably from President Trump, based upon some developments that may still have to happen, though frankly at this point don't need them, but whatever. When that announcement comes and is confirmed by every other head of state of a substantial nation, the others may not have to come forward. They'll know that they've agreed. We enter a paradigm shift that is that end of that lie and that massive truth will send a wave out, I guess you could say, like a electromagnetic wave. We'll call it a wave in the quantum field. It's going to go out around the world. That here is the power of truth. Are you interested in extending it? Are you interested in expanding on this? Having been giving this truth, are you prepared to demand more truth from your government, from your friends, from your city council, from the corporations that are trying to lie to you about buying shit you don't need, or even stuff that can kill you? Are you willing to make truth the fundamental basis of all further activities and engagements, to enter an era of truth, right? Or not? And if we do, it could catch on. And let me give you an example. there are some politicians, I'm not going to name names, who have been involved in the intense political stuff going on, who have been, like almost all politicians, part of the political propaganda reality where you don't just tell the truth to people, you tell them what you got to tell them to get elected, or to support a particular agenda, right? And everybody does it. But some of these politicians decided to engage this issue directly and simply go in front of the cameras and tell the truth. When prior to that, most people felt, particularly people of influence and power, whatever, like, you can't do that, right? It'll ruin you, right? There have been people who have done this, believe me, but nobody in the way that we've recently seen it from sitting members of Congress. And I know for a fact what happened is that these members of Congress started getting a very substantial amount of emails and letters and Twitter tags praising them mightily for doing it. Thank you for telling this truth. Thank you for doing this. And they found that quite invigorating. They, get a lot of hate mail. There are not too many politicians that don't get hate mail or hate tweets or whatever. And suddenly they're getting a very substantial amount of appreciation, very specifically, not for having this position or that position, but for simply telling the truth. And they have responded positively to that. If we enter an age of truth and it gets some momentum, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of companies, a lot of institutions that are going to learn pretty quickly when you tell the people the truth, they like that. They appreciate that. They will praise you for that. And if you tell them more, it only gets better. In other words, you don't have to lie yourself to riches. You don't have to lie yourself to power. You don't have to lie yourself to get friends. Tell the truth and be authentic. You'll do just fine. This seems like so trivial. It isn't trivial. We are, in the matter of truth, as the blood of the body politic, we are bleeding out. As a matter of what people are desperately looking for, because the truth, is not simple, right? It has to be verified. But what they are definitely looking for is authenticity, which is another version of it. Authenticity is another level of this. And I say, and it's not quite the same, and here's why. You can authentically lie.
Authenticate.
There are people that can do this, and they're some of the most dangerous people in the world. They tend to be sociopaths. In other words, you could tell an absolute lie and be so authentic that people are just, but that's why authenticity is a little tricky. So but still, it's like, but authenticity, meaning you are being told something that is true, and the person is being as authentic about it as they can be. In other words, you can tell the truth and use it to manipulate people. It's the truth, but you're manipulating. There's a sub-agenda and all this kind of other stuff. What people want is just tell me the truth, be authentic about it. I'll decide what to do. Authenticity is really scarce. And when somebody has it, the rewards can be extraordinary. And let me give you a simple example. There was a gentleman who has been working in his trade for quite a while. So it's not like he just started doing something along these lines. But he ultimately has a interview show. It's hard to know these days what's a podcast and what's a podcast broadcast or whatever the hell. But let's just say it's streaming one way or the other, right? And he has tens of millions of followers and has earned hundreds of millions of dollars. Why? Because he lies better than everybody else? No. Because he is authentic. And even though there are people out there that have completely different lifestyles, don't view the world the same way, don't dress the same way, they have different backgrounds and everything else, they watch this man because he is authentic. And the desperate need for authenticity worldwide, but certainly in the United States, is palpable. And I am, of course, referring to, if you haven't already figured it out, Joe Rogan.
I was going to say
as
Joe
other
Rogan,
people,
yeah.
so I'm hoping other people are paying attention. Right? Be authentic. Just tell the truth authentically. Yeah, your life will get a lot better. But that's the same thing for corporations. It's the same thing for government agencies. It's the same thing for governments, the military. You pick it, right? So if somehow the ending of the greatest lie of all time and the most profound paradigm shift in history is able to shift a major portion of the world, individuals, institutions, and governments, say shift or make them aware about how authenticity and truth could transform their lives, their goals, and the planet. If that happens, then we might just be in a very different place 10, 15 years after disclosure. And I'll add this, to complete this, is that we may be fortunate enough, if we get disclosure, and it could happen within weeks, that we may also have open contact soon, maybe a year, 2 years later. Open contact is not the same thing as somebody turning up in your bedroom at 2 a.m. And thus there's a dialogue going on that
definitely not.
you're informed about. And that is another level of, how would you say, paradigm shift. And that may help to stimulate reordering our priorities and our behavior so that we do not have that nuclear war. We do not destroy the environment. We do not conduct another 100 genocides or another 50 proxy wars and kill hundreds of millions and more people while making billions of people miserable going forward into the future. That's about as simple as I can put it.
Okay. No, that's lengthy, but nonetheless perfect explanation, I think.
Perfect. Don't say perfect.
Let's talk briefly.
Go ahead.
Well, okay, fine. Succinct and definitely relatable explanation.
Or somebody will tweet later that Bassett said he gave the perfect explanation. You know how Twitter, you know how tweet things work.
Well, I'm not Joe Rogan big yet, so maybe it won't happen yet.
No. Everybody is a player on the internet.
Let me ask you an interesting question that kind of speaks to the roots of what got you into this, and I'll let Taurus girl ask the question for me. She asks, I'm sorry, I called up the wrong one. Have you seen or experienced a UFO yourself, and could you tell us about it?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Okay.
There was a couple of times
that, me, to be honest.
I was at the ranch up in Washington, Gillibrand's ranch. I was out there, but nothing. And then a bunch of us went to dinner, and while we were at dinner, apparently something happened. Missed that. I was up talking to a group up, I think in, I don't know, Upper New York, Connecticut or something. And these people are into the Skywatch stuff and what have you, in addition to presenting. And we all went out there and stood by a lake where apparently a lot of things happened. Nothing. Finally, it was so cold, I left. Later, I was told, something came up. Was that really cool? Okay. But no, I've never had any contact whatsoever. Anything, even a paranormal. I've never really been at a paranormal event, frankly. And
okay,
I'm not sad about that at all, because by not having anything like that how would you say, very profound and impressing thing is not a factor in my work. In other words, I'm not biased toward the issue based upon this powerful, maybe emotional event that happened to me. It is that keeps me grounded, makes it easier for me to stay in the middle where I need to be and approach it from a more grounded perspective.
Gotcha. Taurus girl and I, and probably everyone else listening to one degree or another, I will put her statement up. She says, yes, I think the people knowing the truth is going to go down quite well. Here's hoping. I think so. I think so. I don't think we're a bunch of panicky animals like we were maybe back in the 20s when the whole War of the Worlds radio show was on the air and people ran out and shot water towers because they thought they were aliens. You know,
Well,
we've
first of all,
we've definitely moved beyond that.
if you do some research on it, you'll find that the amount of people that got upset was really not that many. Okay, that's point one. But it was
Yeah.
obviously just blown up by those that wanted to scare people. All right. And the second thing is, this wasn't the United States government confirming we're not alone in the universe. This
No,
was
it
a
wasn't.
radio show about an actual invasion of extraterrestrials that put out a notice that this is not real. But a lot of people didn't see that notice. They were watching another show and then transferred over, thought it was real, and they were being
Yeah,
invaded.
that's what happened.
There is no comparison, and yet it was milked to death. Just like poor Margaret Mead, who wrote these studies about the cargo cults that started in the Pacific because planes were stationed there for a while, and when the war was over, they left, and they thought of them as gods, and so they made these shrines to them and everything else. They milked that to death. They put it in the friggin' I'm having a memory issue. The Brookings report. I mean, it's in retrospect, this is all so silly, not worthy of a country that helped win 2 world wars and built a massive economy to use such stupid ass stuff in order to maintain a proof embargo. It's not worthy of this, but whatever. It's not relevant. It really
No,
isn't.
I agree. I mean, to rely on those very narrow examples and blowing them out to insane proportions, as you put, is, I think it's a slap in the face to the public. You know, we're not that stupid of a people at all.
Yeah. Now, let me give another example.
So I agree with Taurus Girl.
Yeah, let me give you 911.
Say again.
When 911 took place,
Okay.
the American people had a fairly nuanced reaction. They were not happy and they were angry without question. All right. But there were plenty of people that were bringing forward the idea that this is a terrible thing and it needs to be addressed. But let's be careful. Let's think through this. We have a massive amount of sympathy around the world toward the United States at a time when there's a lot of people out there that don't like us at all, and that we should step back. It wasn't the American people really that reacted inappropriately to this. It was the government that reacted inappropriately by launching multiple invasions based on lies, creating a catastrophe. All right. And so I am less worried about the American people's reaction to the truth embargo than I am the government's reaction to the truth embargo. But having said that, I think it's going to be okay. All right. Now, we could have the truth embargo could end on next Wednesday. And then a week later, suddenly the DOD comes out with a proposal for a $2 trillion weapons buildup using information from captured vehicles in order to protect ourselves against the rest of the galaxy. That would be an inappropriate response. Is that possible? Yeah. But thanks to the work of so many people for so long, there's enough awareness. I don't think they could sell that lemon to the public. But it's not out of the question. There's no guarantees that the U.S. government or any other government, particularly Russia and China, will react to the post-disclosure world appropriately and not milk it for more nonsense and destruction or whatever, or try to use it to their ideological ends or whatever the hell. I mean, there's no guarantee there. But fortunately, and this is what's different from any similar situation in the past, the greatest paradigm shift of all time, is going to take place in the greatest networking era of all time. in which the technology has arrived, been developed, and has been dispersed, in which you got to be living in the middle of a dense jungle or in a cave to not be able to go immediately and communicate with the rest of the world one way or the other. 8 billion people are literally connected now like a giant brain in which they can communicate at will. They can even translate language to language. And so the whole world will learn about it, and the whole world will be able to talk about it and address it. And so the ability of nations to take advantage of this paradigm shift in order to commit more atrocities without people going, just a second here, can we step back on this? It will be harder. And so that gives me optimism.
Good stuff. And on that optimistic note, we're going to take a very short station break. We'll be back in. This is the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 in the Gulf Coast. UPRN Esoteric programming at its finest. And we're back. So, we have a positive outlook on capital D disclosure. Fantastic. Yep. I'm all for it. Something popped into my head. Do you, and I kind of foresee this happening because there's some, I'm going to put it out there, I'm going to say childish reciprocity between the major superpowers on this planet. Reciprocity, I think I used the wrong word there, but I foresee where, be it Russia, be it China, be it anyone else who is in the superpower realm, as the United States is, are going to say, well, we were telling the truth for years and years. Wow, our disclosure movement didn't mean anything, that type of thing. Do you foresee something like that coming to play?
Not a problem. No country has confirmed the extraterrestrial presence. A limited number of countries have engaged it. Okay, number of South American countries. Japan has a lot of interest in Japan. Some research. China, there's a lot of people in China that are researching it, involved in it, and there's a lot of people in China. The government is not really given them a difficult time, as far as I know, and the subject was relatively available and researched in citizens in the Soviet Union, and then in Russia. There was a development of some substance out of France. Those have happened, but no country has come forward and confirmed the extraterrestrial presence. Now, there have been citizen actions. Okay, so absolutely, right? I mean, I've got supporters all over the world. So there are citizens in other countries, and I can assure you that post-disclosure, PRG, and I think other entities will more than acknowledge that. I mean, we've been more than happy to start pointing out the people that were working on this in Brazil and Japan and whatever. I mean, hopefully we'll try to acknowledge them. In fact, one of PRG's post-disclosure jobs, assuming I can get some reasonable money to fly this airplane, is to help ensure that everyone that has been doing this work throughout the truth embargo gets as much acknowledgement as possible. My website is devoted to a lot of that. I've got a section on my website.
Why don't you give us that website real quick? Can you give us that website real quick?
ParadigmResearchGroup.org. Yeah. Or Google my name, Stephen Bassett, but ParadigmResearchGroup.org. There's a section on there.
Okay.
Hang on.
Is that
a little sharing? Wouldn't hurt, right? Let's do a little sharing. Let's see what we can do here. What is that? Let me get out of there. Let me go here. All right, just a second. I'm looking at a big screen. That's why I'm turned away.
No worries.
Exit. Oh, I got to exit full screen down here. No problem. Right. I could do. Okay. And then I'm going to go here.
Sorry.
Okay. And then I'm going to go here. Right. By the way, this is the front page, and this is a statement of where PRG is, and there is a donation module right here. Okay.
Okay.
At least it's supposed to be.
I can't see your screen. Okay.
It should be working. There it is, right? Where people can.
No, I don't see it.
Yeah, there it is.
No,
you're not seeing it?
You have to do.
So when
No, I have your
I
address scrolling across the bottom.
haven't done the share. I'm so sorry. Oh, it's
Oh, it's
so.
okay. Go to present and
Hang
you
on. Oh, I
can
know how to do
do
this.
that.
I forget. So I got to go present, and I got to go share screen, and then I got to share. Which one do I do? Screen sharing. No, screen sharing works best on a good computer. I got it. Yeah. Okay. Share
With
screen. All right. So
Chrome.
let's see.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to. Come here. Well, yeah. There we
Well, I
go.
have the address up on the
That's
scroll
all right.
right now.
All
It's
right.
on the tech.
So yeah, this is the donation
Oh,
page
okay.
for
Here it comes.
PRG. A little promotion there, but here is in fact what I want to show you
There it is.
under
Okay.
projects, ongoing, print media archive. I don't mean that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Uh, projects ongoing and in memoriam. Okay. So what this section is, is been set up to acknowledge the people who have engaged this issue. While the truth embargo is in place, some of which for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and each one has some information behind the photo, links to a substantial amount of information. Some case, as best I can, and I think I'm up to like about 120 individuals that have made I consider to be substantive. Now I know it doesn't have everybody, and I'm open to suggestions at any time, but these people can't be forgotten, right? By history, just because the government said it was all not true, and they were doing it anyway. The idea is, well, the government said it wasn't true, and you wasted your time, whatever. No, they cannot be forgotten. The first one goes back to 59, and that's Morris Jessup, and it goes from there. And obviously, it includes the people you'd expect: James McDonald, Jesse Marcel, Alan Hynek, Kenneth Arnold, and so forth. This is representative of one of the things that PRG is going to be focusing on. These people can't be forgotten, but there's something else. Hang on. See this right here? This is the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Okay, assuming it's come up, I assume it has. And
they haven't. We're still in memoriam on the page.
Okay, I switched over, but what I have to do is go back to the share.
Go out and come back in,
and do another one. That's all right. Come here.
Big hello to Sherry Madigan while we wait for that.
Hi, Sherry. How you doing? Okay.
She said hi a whiles back.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Video, image. What am I? Wait a minute. Present. All right. Oh, I have to stop that and go back and do it again.
Yeah,
okay.
And go back in.
Share screen. Yeah. Some you can jump around, but whatever. And so here's this Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. This is along the same line. Now, I founded this with Dan.
Oh, there it goes. Okay.
I founded this with Dan Harari, a Hollywood publicist, about 16 months ago. And there are two reasons why we did that. Okay. One is to create a networking entity, a nonprofit networking entity, where the people who have done all the heavy lifting all these decades with their own money while the truth embargo was underway, all right, that these people would be able to participate in the massive media content creation that's going to come, because there's 8 billion people out there that want to know what the hell happened and what's going on. And the film industry is going to be the major conduit for that. And so what we did is we created a networking entity called the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It's nonprofit. It has two groups. It has 201 members now, and one group, what we call the Hollywood founding members. And these are people with, in some cases, substantial experience in the film, entertainment, television, and so forth, documentaries, business, many of which, of course, based in LA, but there are also others that are based around the world. And they are up here as founding members in that industry. Okay. And then we have a group of UAP founding members. And so these are people, many of which you will probably recognize, who have been in dealing with this issue as citizen scientists or journalists or activists, documentarists, podcasters, researchers, and so forth, to get the truth out for decades, right? And there's about 90 of them. Almost 100 of them. And so by being up here, we're making it easy for them to find each other. We're making it easy for people in the UAP field to find each other. Not that they can't do that, but then also in the content creation world. And so they all can network cross genre there, but then people outside that come to the site can see who's making stuff, and they may not be a member of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, but they know who to get in contact with, and we can facilitate that. And deals are made, and films are created, and so forth. We don't make any money. HDA doesn't make any money. All it does is help people get together. We are able to do our work based upon funding, 501c3 tax deductible funding. And we're looking for about $25,000 from a person that sees the wisdom of this, and we can start doing a lot of stuff, holding various events and so forth. And so this all comes under the heading of making sure that the people that did all the heavy work are not left behind as we move into the post-disclosure world. And that is one of the things I am most committed to in my activism. And I'm not going to stop that. So I bring it up for that reason. The other thing that I want to mention while I've got the share up, and I think I have to go back again. Hang on. Do this. Something happened is going on right now, which is a major deal. Let me do that. I'm going to go present. And I'm going to go to share screen. And it is this.
Proper hello to Howie Odell while we're doing that.
It is right here. This is a big deal. Okay. This is an article that came out yesterday in the Hollywood Reporter. It is a very extensive article. Okay. Very extensive article. Everybody
summarize what's happening?
I will, yeah. Just want to show how extensive it is. Okay. All right. Everybody in Hollywood, in LA, in the industry reads the Hollywood Reporter. And what this article is about is that a major documentary is going to premiere tomorrow at the SXFW, South by Southwest Film Festival in Austin, Texas. It is called The Age of Disclosure. All right. It is a multi-million-dollar, 2.5-year documentary that is produced by a Hollywood longtime pro who has been involved in major films by the name of Dan Farah. It will have 35 high-level witnesses, people in government, politics, and so forth, packed together in a very high production value event. And it has already received millions of views to the trailer, which you can easily find. Just go Google The Age of Disclosure trailer, and might very well become soon the first documentary on the UAP issue and the truth embargo to ever be given broad, full out, big screen distribution. That's never happened, right? Because the film industry understood, make all the sci-fi movies about this you want, make billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, but do not put a documentary challenging the truth embargo up on the big screens. And they have gone along with that for all these years. But that's about to change. It is a very significant thing. And so it will eventually premiere in LA, and we're following it very closely. One of the people in the film is Bob Salas, one of the witnesses, firsthand witnesses to the shutting down of our nukes, which extremely pleases me because Bob Salas is, and along with several other of the nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, are slated, certainly kind of on deck, to testify at the next House Oversight Subcommittee. We hope. I mean, it's definitely possible. They're in the works. So these are the kinds of developments. So go find this article and read it. And this article about this movie will tell you all you need to know how close we are to disclosure. So let me get back here. Come on back. And I may have to share some more stuff. You never know. But that's just a taste of what's going on. But that's not all that's going on, Tim. There's so much happening, I can barely keep up with
it. That is, well, that's phenomenal. I mean, this producer actually put this out there against warnings, from what I understand.
Really?
Against, say, don't put it out there. And he
let's just say yeah. Okay, let's just say that doesn't work anymore, right? This gentleman, Ben Harrow, has produced major films, and he was involved in Ready Player One and others. Check him out on IMDb. So it doesn't work anymore. I'm hoping that more and more people within the government understand you've lost. You just don't know it yet. You've lost. The truth embargo is basically over. We just need the final confirmation from the president. So get on the side of history, get with the program, get on the disclosure train, and don't be pains in the ass.
I like the way you put that.
Just saying, just passing on a message.
One of the, I'm a filmmaker myself, so I may join that little thing. I'll check it out for myself and see what's going on.
You're welcome.
And sci-fi is my go-to. So,
you want to be in the HDA, my friend? Consider it done. I just need a photo and a reasonable bio, good photo, reasonable bio, and we will get you up there.
Yeah. Fantastic. That'd be fun. One of the things that was brought to mind as you were telling us about this upcoming film was some of the more secretive work that Hollywood has been involved in. And one of those things was scenarioizing. That's a horrible word, but putting forth scenarios in a fictional space that the military, if you want to call it the military-industrial complex, you can, but the military just couldn't think that far outside the box. So you got things like The Red October. I mean, that was a book originally, but I mean, these authors and producers and other people fed this idea, and they actually had to get clearance after certain moments. Oh, we never thought of that. Let us do something to protect that. We'll protect the story out. And the name of the operation eludes me. But that has been happening for decades. And so a lot of our science fiction and fictional stories that you think, oh my gosh, could that really happen? Well, someone thought of it. They thought it was a potential risk, and at one point or another, the government said, yeah, okay, we got that covered. If you want to tell the story now, you can't. But it was like 10, 20, 15, 25 years later.
There are books out on this. There's some books on this.
Sorry, go ahead.
The relationship between the truth embargo and the film industry is complicated, to say the least. And there are some books. I think Robbie Graham wrote one. There's the late Robbie Graham, sadly enough. And there's been a few others, but the full story is not out yet. But here's one of the things that what we'll call the entertainment industry does. And in this, I'll focus on films and television, which now films and television includes stream. Films and television, internet, whatever, it's all kind of one thing. Does something of importance that needs to be dealt with, and it's just not being dealt with. In other words, the government's not doing anything about it, and it just seems It just seems nothing's going to happen, and the people are frustrated and they're angry. So what the entertainment industry does is deal with it fictionally to make you feel better. All right. And so over the last 70 years, as the what we'll call the military intelligence complex, or the massive intelligence world, this world of secrecy and everything else, has grown to extraordinary proportions and gotten out of hand and abused power and everything else. It's almost nothing has been done about that. Nothing. The institutions of our politics, the two parties, even the White House, nothing. It's like they have their own little world. Richard Dillon calls it a breakaway civilization. I call it the secret empire, whatever the hell, right? There was they poked at that bear a couple of times. The Church Committee, Senator Church put together a committee because some abuses. There was the Iran-Contra thing, but overall, nothing. And so if you go and check, the films and do the search on the films, you can find scores and scores and scores, maybe hundreds of films in which the subject of the film is the abuse of secrecy by the secret state, right? Okay. Enemy of the people, on and on and on. And we see them, Matt Damon, what the hell was that thing? I forget all those series. In other words, we're seeing the deep state, or not just the deep state, I don't like that term, but we're seeing the secret world of intelligence, everything that is abusing and doing awful things being dealt with, right? And they take a shot, right? And they have to pay a price or whatever the hell. And it makes us feel better because, well, we know we can't do anything about it, but here is a fictional version of that. And it's not the only film does that in a number of ways. It is both a blessing and a curse. It is a blessing because it brings the issue out. It sort of makes you aware, that's going on. But it's also a curse because in many respects, people go, hey, that's what's happening, and I can see it, and I actually enjoyed the movie, but what's the point? I'm not going to do anything about it. They'll settle for that. They'll settle for the fictional comeuppance without challenging the government. So, but that's been going on. Now, in the ET issue, oh yeah. The truth embargo has been engaged in fictional movies plenty. All right, no question about it. And God bless them. Right. One of the coolest examples of this, and I think there are plenty that are not known about that one day we will learn about. One of the coolest examples of this involves the movie Independence Day. I have the poster right over here on my left side here. Independence Day, like so many movies, was basically a advertisement for the military, right? The Air Force and the Navy and all this kind of stuff, and just how wonderful it is, and go sign up, right? All the Top Gun films are basically advertisements for the military. And there's tons of films like
Top
this.
Gun did that too, yeah.
Oh yeah, and so not surprisingly, the Pentagon, the Air Force, or whatever, have been helpful in these films. They provide resources. They provide access to tech or access to the odd destroyer, the odd airplanes, or whatever else. I mean, they really do help out.
Yeah.
They actually had an office, and maybe still do, that is devoted to the relationship between Hollywood or the film industry and the Pentagon to sort of, keep the interaction going and what have you. That's not particularly big deal. Okay. However, it's not, it's not a notice that while they're providing all this cool stuff to make all these great movies that are recruiting people into the military, they want nothing to do with the how would you say, the ET issue and the embargo, right? The truth embargo. So, okay.
Right.
So here's the example. Independence Day is one of those kind of movies. I mean, it had it all. It was the 4th of July, rah, America and everything movie. And so the Department of Defense was participating in it substantially. And then somebody read the part in the script where they referred to Area 51 and the fact that the Roswell vehicle, that's where it was. And when someone read that
Yeah.
over at the Pentagon, they contacted the producers of the movie and say, we're not going to do anything for you unless you take that out. It's a great story.
Interesting.
And there are that story hopefully will get reinforced at some point. We need more information on that. But it came out a number of almost 8, 9, 10 years ago. And the producers of that movie, and I don't know who they are, should check, basically said, fine, we'll make it without you. And that was a message. I know that for the DOD, they're going, you telling me that they just said make it without that? And they're going, what are we going to do about Hollywood? And so that is an example. So there is this very complex relationship that we will learn about.
Yeah.
All of it. But I can't be too irritated because, but since Roswell, the population was about 1.5 billion, and now it's 8 billion. So there's 8 billion people that have grown over time. That's just the people that are alive now. The total number of people that have been on the planet for the last 78 years is probably like 11 billion people. Most of them learned about this ET thing, not through MUFON or docs that have been made by our colleagues, but rather through the sci-fi films. The idea of non-humans, the idea of UFOs, the idea of craft and everything else was basically spread through these films, 600 films, so that it is simply ubiquitous. There is the concept of non-humans and the concept of UFOs has a market penetration of the planet Earth probably in the 90+% range, which is staggering.
Yeah.
Meaning if you had a product that had a 90% penetration of the market, awareness in the market, you could be a trillionaire. So that's the role they played, and I respect that.
Agreed. There is something to be said for having I don't know. Do you want to call it foresight? Do you want to call it not imagination, but fortitude, I guess, to put that level of a story out there, regardless of what your government counterparts say. I applaud that as well. That's pretty cool.
A lot of people learned about Roswell for the first time when they watched Independence Day and Area 51. I'm sure that movie made a lot of money. And again, most people may not know. A lot of people don't know this, but these major films have more ticket revenues outside of the U.S. than in the U.S. So if it makes $1 billion,
the international
majority of that is coming from outside, and so people all over the world are learning about Roswell and Area 51. In other words, the truth embargo was always a losing game. There was no way that it could last. It was only a matter of how long they would hold on, and there are countless reasons for that. But again, has it held on too long? Oh God, yes. I would love to be able to take a time machine back to 47 and sit across from Harry Truman and convince him, go ahead and confirm Roswell. Go ahead and do it. And I think the 20th century would have been very, very different and far better outcome. Or go back to the Rockefeller Initiative and be in the Oval Office and somehow convince Bill Clinton to basically tell the Department of Defense to go pound sand, and that you want files and you want information. They're going to file every friggin' appointee over there, right? And end it then, which would have been right after the Cold War had come to an end, the first version of it. And I think the next 50 years, I've said 50 years, no, not 50 years, but the next 30 years would have gone very, very differently. The truth embargo was not unjustified, but it lasted too long. Like
Agreed.
Seafood at a picnic. It's perfectly fine to have seafood at the picnic, but if it sits out too long and you eat it, it'll kill you. Shelf life. And that is the tragedy of the truth embargo. Not that it happened, but that it lasted too long.
I can agree with that. So, okay, let's touch on that briefly. And perhaps you touched on it already, and maybe I just forgot, but for the truth embargo to be initialized, means how would I put this? So, okay, when the truth embargo was initialized, it was at Roswell. That's the start of it, correct?
At the time of Roswell, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
symbolically, there's a couple of targets for the very beginning of the truth embargo. One of which
Okay.
is the first one. Well, let me put it this way: if there was another crash earlier than Roswell, then it started then. But or even the 1933 possible crash that got delivered to us via the eventually from Italy. But we don't know anything about that. It's just recently come out and it's uncertain. But let's just concentrate what we kind of do know. You could say the truth embargo began when a bunch of MPs pulled Mac Brazel off the street of Roswell, took him away for about 7 days and interrogated the hell out of him, and to convince him to change his story, right? And apparently they gave him some money and a brand new truck, and he quickly left town. So it could have been that. The other start would be when Ramey holds the second press conference, brings in the press and turns the Roswell thing around. Okay, that could be the beginning of the truth embargo, and that's not an unreasonable place. The formal beginning of the truth embargo, when it gets really formalized, that occurs in 1953. When after the huge flyover of Washington in July 52 of basically controlled plasma effects, the same thing that probably the Foo Fighters were, the same thing that has been in our skies for the last 4 months, actually going back 2 years, the biggest UFO flap in history, which has driven the government nuts, twisted it into knots, that after those flybys, the government realized there's nothing they could do. These ETs are going to do whatever the hell they wanted. And they really got concerned. So they put together a CIA panel, Robertson panel, and got a report back that said, doesn't look like these things are a threat, but the public's interest in it is a problem, is a threat. And therefore, we have got to deal with the public's interest. And thus, the full force and power of the United States government came to bear on minimizing, undermining, and suppressing the public's interest in this phenomena. And so I consider that the formal beginning of the truth embargo.
And from that point, it went global because everyone followed the U.S. as examples at the governmental level.
It's interesting. We don't know a lot about the sightings in other countries. Again, sightings over the Soviet Union or China, we're going to know nothing about. And at the time, just think about it. It's after World War II. Maybe some sightings are happening down in South America or Africa. I mean, there's just not much there. But clearly, other countries were seeing things and didn't have much to work with. And so exactly how the rest of the world fell in line is not clear. However, the most obvious way to look at it is this: Roswell was an extremely public event. I mean, the articles were written. They went out on the AP, so plenty of countries learned about it one way or the other. And then the Ramey event, in which they said no, that's not what it was, that went out. All right. In fact, I've got the articles, both front pages on my wall over here. That went out worldwide. So all of our major allies, like the UK and so forth, France, Spain, all those countries probably figured out right away that we don't want that out. Now, to what extent any of them were contacted by people in our government, not surreptitiously, under the same whatever, we don't know. I think some of that took place. Some nations might have needed that, others maybe not, but somehow or another, the rest of the world fell in line over the period from 47 to 52. And then when we had that huge flyby over Washington, which also got plenty of media, and then we came out with the Robertson panel, and of course we tamped that down. That reinforced whatever the position of the other governments were, and so again, they fell in line. But this is one of the great untold stories, which the historians they'll get at it. right? And we will get some accounting of it, but we're in no position now to find out. But it is a very significant part of the truth embargo, which is just an unbelievable event. I mean, this documentary, The Age of Disclosure, is significant. But there is a documentary that needs to be made called The Truth Embargo. I made a couple of pretty lame runs at it. That would be the equivalent of Ken Burns' Civil War. And I mean a 10, 15, 20 episode history of the truth embargo beginning to end, covering all of the aspects. It would be very difficult to do because of so much classification. But that story, it has not been told yet, and one day hopefully will be told. And it is one hell of a story. The truth embargo is just one of the most extraordinary, profound things that has ever happened in the processing of government and so forth in the history of the human race, as far as I'm concerned. It's just amazing. I marvel at it, how they did it, how it worked out, how it happened, what went into it. It's just an amazing story, but it's a major, multi-million-dollar mega project that somebody will do. I hope I live long enough to see it.
I hope I'm the one who makes it. No, I'm just, but that'd be fun.
Well, if you get $50 million, call.
Yeah, vice versa. I'll make that film right now. But let's from the onset of the truth embargo, we have. I don't know. Was it? I guess it was a media thing even back then, because we had, if you see something, you're a kook, you're crazy, you didn't see anything, and this veil of dismissal, especially back at the early onset of the embargo, was that through media? Was that through word of mouth? Was it because I'm trying to figure out how everybody was suddenly on that page to one degree or another? You either
Not
had
suddenly.
the witness who was, go ahead.
Not suddenly. The early days, it was serious. I mean, 47 to 52, it got a lot of attention, and there were people coming forward, and they were being heard. Donald Keogh was getting heard. When they had the 52 event, Keogh was interviewed, and he said flat out, "That's extraterrestrial." And the video that was put out by General Sanford was not unreasonable. But ultimately, what taints, what ultimately starts building the intellectual ghetto is this. So the government was not going to acknowledge it. The government said, no, we don't have a crash vehicle, and this is not ET, whatever. And that's fine. That's not going to create an intellectual ghetto. But the U.S. government after World War II was pretty highly respected. We had a pretty good period there, right? We had the Korean War. That was a drag. But overall, the soldiers came home. They were on the GI Bill. They went to college. They got jobs. They built families. The United States was going through a great growth period, and people were pretty happy. From 45 to 60, right? Not everybody,
Right.
I assure you, but still, overall, it was a time of some confidence and future looking and so forth. And the U.S. government, which had just defeated the Axis powers and had established a nuclear arms capability to defend ourselves against what we knew was a nuclear Soviet Union. China would come later. So there was a high regard for the American government, which I think probably had a much higher truth quotient as well. I think most kids today can't even imagine it. The Gen X, the millennials can't even conceive of what that was like. I can barely conceive of it because I was alive at the time, but young still. We're not like that anymore. And so when the government is basically saying there's nothing to it, the vast majority of the American people said, "Oh, absolutely." So when other people were into this, when other people started coming forward because they saw things or they wanted to have some fun, get attention, whatever. And the best known example of this were oh Lord, the Space Brothers. I don't know for sure if abduction was taking place as early as the 50s, but it's very possible. We didn't really get an understanding of it until what, almost 30 years later. So if there was contact going on, you had people coming forward and saying, I saw this, I saw that, I met an alien or whatever. And they're saying that at a time when the US government is highly respected. And so they were being dismissed as crazy, right? And laughed at. Right. And that took a while. It wasn't, a year, it took a while, but as more sightings took place and people kind of got on board with this, some for fun, whatever, the more laughter took place. And so essentially, the government made it possible for the public to embarrass itself to a point to start to build that stigma and build that truth embargo, build that ghetto, this intellectual ghetto. And so it took time. And then every year as you go after that, it just got worse and worse because the sightings kept happening. And every time there was a sighting, more people got on board. More people were willing to step out. More people would announce. We had organizations that were formed and people joined it. It became a thing. But for the vast majority of the American people, it was still nonsense. And so you've got this tension between people, a number of people growing that think this is real, and the vast majority of the American public think it is nonsense. And so consequently, the stigma was guaranteed to grow. And of course, the government was facilitating that in other ways. And that's what built the intellectual ghetto. But it didn't start off as an intellectual ghetto. And it took a while to build there. And that was the job of the government, was to help make sure that happened. But in the absence of a proper engagement, in the absence of appropriate science and so forth, a lot of just regular citizens helped build the government's intellectual ghetto. And this is perfectly analogous because guess what? The Germans forced the Jews to help build their own ghettos. And so, and I'm not uncomfortable about making that analogy. This is a ghetto, but it's an intellectual ghetto, and the walls are made of ridicule, and the government almost forced the American people to help build that ghetto.
Sorry, I had myself muted. One of our chat people, Wood Writers, has, he said his argument is that the government will not be the ones putting forth the information, breaking down the walls of disclosure, and making that happen because they are the keepers of the secrets. But you expressed earlier on, I think he just joined us, so I know you expressed earlier on that we have an administration in place now that would be a little more keen to make that a reality.
Well, much more than that. Yeah, much more than that. First of all, the government will not be the only thing bringing about disclosure. There's a lot of forces at play here, but disclosure, as I defined it, can only come from the head of state, and so ultimately, the head of state, which currently is our president, is going to be the one that confirms it, right? And that's capital D disclosure. Now, once the confirmation comes, that just means we know there's ETs here and the government's confirmed it, but all the stuff, all the research, the files, whatever, everything they own and have and hold on this issue, that's not out yet. They have released stuff. Yeah. The government has helped. They released a bunch of no issue has been FOIA'd more than this issue. It just endless FOIs
Right.
pouring in. And so they were all constantly under pressure. So they released a bunch of CIA documents, which if you go read them are kind of interesting. The FBI has released some documents kind of interesting. So it's not that the government has completely not done something that helps. I think that was kind of like showing the flag a little bit and just saying, hey, we're not totally evil. We're willing to do something, but the truth embargo stands. All right.
Yeah.
So there's that. And so once we get disclosure, then we go get the stuff. Now, that's going to take some time. It will take years to get it all out, but it will all come out. And that's where the legislation comes in. One of the reasons that we're close to disclosure is because prior to 2021, right, well, actually, it was December of 2020, there'd never been a piece of legislation on this issue. There's been 4 substantial pieces of legislation since then, including the UAP Disclosure Act, note the name, which is still in place. It was reduced, but it's in place. It's been resubmitted. It's about to be resubmitted again. And the UAP Disclosure Act, if you read the original or the resubmitted one last year, is the total package. In other words, the UAP Disclosure Act isn't about getting the president to disclose. It's about what's going to happen when the president does disclose, really. But the act did go into effect right away. And so for those that may not know this, even though the Disclosure Act was cut in half and the powers were taken out by a pushback, mostly from defense contractors, the part in the bill where the National Archives would set up a UAP special archive, all right, and that things would then go into it based upon some orderly process. It's actually happened. There is a UAP archive at the National Archives. You can go find it online, and things are starting to turn into it, all right? But, crash vehicles, formalized videos of events, gun camera footage, yada, yada. No, that's not going to come in until we get disclosure, capital D disclosure confirmation. And then we get the rest. Now, this gentleman may be correct in this sense, that there are aspects of the evidence and material that we have in our essentially facilities, right, both public and government and private, that they will hold on to the last minute. In other words, they will do everything they can to keep that as long as possible. And that's not going to shock anybody. But there will be things coming out all the time, and the public will be generally comfortable, though there will be demands. Well, look, this is great, but we want that. And so there's going to be a tug of war, but this tug of war will be conducted under a legislative umbrella. And there will be some things, and the stuff that comes out last, or the stuff I can't wait to see. Will something not come out at all? The only way that will happen, I believe, well, the way that will happen is this: a rogue group, separate enough from virtually all oversight, will simply just fade into the background and continue doing their stuff, somehow funded somehow, and nobody knows about it, though they'll be breaking the law and possibly headed for prison. Or there will be agreement by the eventual Presidential Review Board, which is eventually going to happen, that can't come out. And under the legislation, they'll have to account for the why a little bit, and they have to provide some information so we know under the law that something is being withheld, right? I mean, obviously that's light years from where we are now. And it's possible there'll be a couple of things that may remain there for years, maybe even decades. I doubt it, but it's possible. On the other hand, if we get open contact a year or two after disclosure, I think it all comes out at that point. I mean, there's just no point in keeping anything back.
Right.
And also, it's also this: whatever their plans are for how and what comes out when, right? That's all fine. I'm sure they all have their views about that and their views about how important what they're holding is, etc. I don't think anybody in government has the slightest idea of the pressure that is going to be put on the United States government post-disclosure. Because, and I've talked about this many times, people in government working on advanced secret programs and just about anything else do not doom scroll. They're not on Twitter. They don't want anything to do with the internet. They want to be left alone. And so their kids know, right? But they don't know. And so when we get disclosure, 8 billion people are going to go online in one point or another and demand God knows what. In other words, we want it. We want all of it. We want it now. And the pressure is going to be unbelievably intense. And the journalist world is unfettered at that point, meaning, hey, cat's out of the bag. I see Pulitzer Prizes everywhere. And the journalist is going to be on them relentlessly. And so this idea, yeah, we'll get that out one day, maybe 10, 15 years. I don't think so. It's going to come out a hell of a lot faster than they want. And that's the way it is. And so I understand the gentleman's concern. The past is not prologue, though. We will get it all, and we will get disclosure, hopefully within the next month or so.
That would be awesome. Let me ask you this then, as we come to the close of our show. If there's any one piece of information that you're most excited about being released, what would that be?
The single thing that I am looking most forward to, I'm also involved in it, for me is an easy one. It's been 30 years in the making, right? The effort to try to get this done was initially launched by Bob Salas back in '94. I didn't enter the field until January of '96. So for 31 years, Captain Bob Salas, who was present at the shutdown of the missiles at Malmstrom, has been trying to get him and a number of other Air Force officers to testify before Congress. And of course, that can't happen. And so they just got ghosted. Right now, 4 of the living gentlemen who are still alive, information about them has been provided to every member of the Senate Intel Committee and every member of the House Subcommittee on Oversight. They have hard copies of the witness statements. They've got electronic copies. They've got a cover letter from Bob. And Bob has actually sat down and talked with one of them, and that is Nancy Mace, Representative Mace. And so the single thing that I need and want and look forward to is this. Bob Salas and hopefully 3 other gentlemen will sit down and will come to the Hill. They will take an oath, probably before the House Subcommittee on Oversight, and they will testify to the shutdown of our nuclear missiles. And I will be in that audience. That is the single most desired thing outside of disclosure itself for me. And I will be a very happy man that day. I assure you.
Fantastic. To play the little kid, to play to the little kid in me, I'm looking forward to Lightspeed Engines, but that's me. Just because I'm a Star Trek fan.
You may very well see it. Just stick around. I think it's as short of 10 years out. They're closing in on the physics of basically non-relativistic travel, right? In other words, you're moving from one point to another, but you're not going through time space as we know it. And as a result, time dilation is either eliminated or minimized, and you end up getting a lot further faster. And if it wasn't for the fact that ETs are here and have been coming here for a long time, because I watch Ancient Aliens, plenty of that is actually going to prove out. I have to believe it's possible. And so that's all I need to know. But I also I pay attention to some of the physics, and they're getting close. And that's not trivial. That's one of the reasons the ETs have escalated their engagement here. It's not just the nukes. It's the fact that we're closing in on what they do. And even if it's interdimensional, we know it can be done. Now, there's some scientists say it's interdimensional, and the physics behind that is 1,000 years from now. And so forget about it. Don't even try. I don't believe it. I think they're star to star. And they have told people they're star to star. They've told contactees they're star to star. They've told Native Americans they're star to star. They've told, the Egyptians and God knows people in Mesopotamia going back, 5,000, 8,000 years. They're star to star. They don't say they're from another dimension. They don't say they're from the future. They say they're from another star. And so I believe them.
Yeah.
And so, You may see it in your
I tend to
lifetime.
go there too. Yeah.
And
The
I'm just saying,
yeah.
I'm submitting my name, to be on a, a ship, and get some, just kind of, little, some people going out to engage and show how nice we are. I'm available. I would like to put my name in now. you know, to go on that
Same,
ship.
me too. I will
Yeah.
mop that ship's floor if it means going out into space. That'd be great.
Whatever, I will shuffle coal into the boiler, whatever it takes. And I'll tell you, the number of people that would do
Whatever it
that.
takes.
Yeah, there are
That'd be
billions of
fun.
people that would take that invite just like that.
There, you know what you were star to star. You were talking about how our alien friends out there are coming from different star systems. There was something, I think it was the Solar Observatory, actually caught the tail. Like it was just at the right angle. They caught what appeared to be a wormhole near our sun. Not a singularity, mind you, but some sort of, conduit.
Mhm. Yeah.
Near our sun, and they said that they followed the direction out and went to another star, which is intriguing. I'm super excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it is. This is advanced physics. I mean, this is brutal stuff. The
Yeah.
the wormhole is kind of identified with the essentially black holes, okay, and singularities and things like this. Sure. And that's tricky because the energy involved is off the charts. It's incredible.
But a sun could power such a thing.
I don't think it's that. I think that the wormhole is a fine idea. Okay, let's use it. It's kind of the thing. I just think what a wormhole is not anything like a black hole. It is the ability to move through space in a way that you are able to get around relativity, and the outcome is that you do emerge, right? And so as you're moving from place to place, when you stop, you kind of emerge out of that particular modality of transportation, and it leaves kind of what looks like some sort of a wormhole. But we don't really know. The idea that it's possible. Now, I also have to admit that if there's any evidence for that, and there seems to be a little bit, like at Skinwalker Ranch and so forth, there's some things that have happened that have got that kind of quality about them. That does kind of lean toward dimensionality too. All right, and I acknowledge that. I mean, any evidence of that type you could easily assign to dimensionality. In other words, the reason there's a hole, it's not to another part of our galaxy, it's to another dimension. And so that keeps that modality alive. I get it. You can't rule it out completely. I still don't think it's the case, but it looks like it. Just like the reports that come in from many contactees that when a gray will turn up in their bedroom, but it won't open the door and walk in. It comes through the wall. Well, that's interesting, right? I've always wondered how I'd react to that. So it comes through a wall. How the hell does it do that? Right? I mean, that's impressive. Okay. And so that lends itself to dimensionality. It lends itself to dimensionality, but it could also just be better physics. In other words, if you have the ability to open a space, which, by the way, all matter is basically all space. I mean, it's a tiny, tiny percentage of matter in the rest of space. If you have the ability to open it so that you can just kind of pass through it, then you're not coming from the dimension. You just got better physics. But that is a question that remains open.
And perhaps better tech too. Yeah,
better everything. But that is a notable thing.
Yeah. On that fantastic note, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our show. Steve, thank you so much for being on with us today. I can't thank you enough. And great information.
Anytime you need me, you call me. You're part of the my podcast army. We're going to get this one podcast at a time.
Let's do it. All right. So without further ado, I will say goodbye to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, those in the chat. And this has been Paranormal Insight. Have a good rest of the week. We'll see you next time. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.